The MSOM 612 coming to you today from Dubai, United Arab Emirates. I'm going to try and see if I can get some better viewing, if you will. You see that stick behind me, that big building? That's actually the Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world. It's a little bit over 1/2 mile in height, so it's 2,700 and some odd feet tall. I'm trying to debate with my daughter today on whether or not we're going to go up to the top of that. And so, I don't know, you're here once, maybe you ought to just go. I mean, we would just go for it. But this is a great place. I've been in Dubai for a few days, and then I was in Abu Dhabi right before that. And just a really welcoming area, fast growing, just exploding in growth, very friendly to Westerners. And so have just been hanging out with my daughter here for a few days. She is the director of graduate recruitment for Southern Methodist University's School of Engineering. And she's here doing some recruiting, and she asked me, she said, "Dad, you want to go with me to the Middle East?" And I said, "Sure. Why not?" And so I've just been hanging out with her for the last few days, and we've got 2 other cities coming up. We're going to Doha, Qatar here in a couple of days, and then we'll wind up in Kuwait City before coming back to the United States. So I hope you had a great second week. Lesson 2 really started you down the road of working on your strategic plan for the company that you selected. And you began to work in Lesson 2 on the discussion boards to talk about some external models that were used to help analyze the external factors that impact businesses. And again, too often companies forget about those external factors. They're so focused on what's going on inside the company that there are different things that are happening outside the company that really influence their ability to grow, their ability to maintain certain things. And so that's what you really needed to look at as part of the discussion this week. I also encourage you to make sure that you use that toolkit. There are several different models that are used in that toolkit that may be helpful for you, not only just in your paper, but certainly in the businesses and the organizations that you work in, volunteer in, and so on. Okay? And then assignment 1 talked about Porter's 5 forces. I mentioned this before, but Michael Porter is sort of the guru, if you will, of strategic planning and business strategy. And he has written many different articles on business strategy and the different forces that impact companies. And his 5 forces model is probably the most well-known of just about anything out there. So assignment 1 focused on that. And then the external analysis that you put together for your course project really had you take a look at the opportunities, the threats that are facing the company. So if you look at a SWOT analysis, the external analysis of that is the OT, or the opportunities and threats of SWOT. So that's always a great place to start, because if you don't know what's going on in the marketplace around you as a foundation, then you may operate with some blinders on. So that was the reason that I always start these out, and the reason that the system that we use for the 6-step strategic planning process really talks about opportunities and threats, or those external things that can impact your business going forward. Okay, so that was Lesson 2. Lesson 3 starts talking about internal analysis, but in order to do that, discussion 1 talks about organizational honesty. This is one of the biggest issues that I see in businesses as I consult with companies, with churches, with other organizations, is you have them do an analysis of their strengths and weaknesses, and you'll get a laundry list of strengths that are a mile long. But when you start talking about weaknesses, you get lockjaw, and they may have 2 or 3 that they list. And we all know that's not true, right? And so this discussion board, what I did was I took an organization that should be the most honest in the world, and that is a church. And I asked you to pretend like there were some issues with the youth ministry at that church, and how would you approach those things going forward? Because I've consulted with churches, I've worked in churches in a lot of different areas, and sometimes this is very, very hard to do. Because again, you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, but again, you can not hurt somebody's feelings into oblivion, if you will. And then one day when you wake up and things are in shambles, then you really hurt their feelings going forward. So rather than be honest at the start, sometimes we just decide to roll it under the carpet. And so that discussion board is really about dealing with organizational honesty. And then the application this week builds off of the video that you see from Yves Monroe. And I apologize, he can be sometimes kind of hard to understand in that. But he has these 6 rules that talk about organizational complexity. And not only is organizational honesty important, but sometimes organizational complexity is a real challenge, because how many times have you been part of an organization that decided to do some change, but they just added things on? So rather than take something away and make it simpler, they added things on, and in doing so made it much more complex. That happens all the time. And so one of the challenges that he presents in this are developing these 6 rules to help deal with organizational complexity. So I hope you find some meat in that. I also have a paper that you'll see as part of that as well to help guide your thinking going forward. And then finally this week in the course project edition, remember these course project editions are cumulative, so they all build off of each other into one big paper. You have a submission every week. Talks about internal analysis of the company, or the strengths and weaknesses, the SW of SWOT. Okay? So as you're looking at these, I encourage you to put as much focus as you can on the weaknesses as you do the strengths, to make sure that you're not one of those organizational dishonest people, right? Because you have to be very objective as you go through those things. All right? So have a great week. I'm going to be traveling here for the next couple of weeks still, but I am totally accessible here. If you need to chat with me, make sure you bounce me an email. I've really enjoyed getting involved in the discussion boards with you as well, and you'll see my posts will be out there, and this week as to give you some of my thoughts on those going forward. All right, have a great week. Chat with you soon. Study hard.